going to take you now to another session that has already started celebrating 40 years of the Clean Water Act.
Largely in response to the collapse of aquatic life in Lake Erie and the flames on Cleveland's Cuyahoga River. In October of 1972, Democrats and Republicans united to restore and maintain the chemical, physical, and biological integrity of the nation's waters. Those key words that Bob Perciasepe just mentioned a little while ago. And to protect those waters from the headwaters all the way to the estuaries. That bipartisan Congress set this nation on a clean water path, enacting a comprehensive clean water framework with uniform minimum water quality standards, with strong federal-state partnerships, federal funding and support for research, technical assistance, water infrastructure, and enforcement. What better place than Cleveland on the banks of Lake Erie and the Cuyahoga to celebrate 40 years of the Clean Water Act and its phenomenal success in breathing life back into Lake Erie and in restoring the health of the Great Lakes. I loved Frank Greenland's statement and image that he created at yesterday's session, where he said that a good fisherman, not any fisherman, but a good fisherman, reeling in a rainbow trout from the Cuyahoga River, standing in essentially the same place on the pilings of on the Cuyahoga River that was on fire in 1969. To me, that's just a great image of rebirth and restoration. And what better place and time than where we are here to take stock of the challenges ahead for Great Lakes restoration and the critical importance of a strong and effective Clean Water Act in securing our restoration investments and the Clean Water Act policies, priorities, and grassroots action essential to Great Lakes restoration. So that's what we're going to talk about. Ellen and Christy bring a wealth of clean water experience to this discussion. Ellen will give us a national perspective, national overview of the Act, a little bit about its history, its success, and the powerful tools that it provides to restore and maintain our waters. Ellen has a great experience on these issues. She's been the head of Virginia, the state of Virginia's Wetlands and Water Resources programs, as well as in her current position at the EPA Office of Water in D.C. And Christy, of course, needs no introduction. She's really been a leader on Great Lakes and Ohio water quality issues for years now, and she's going to then bring home to Ohio and the Great Lakes these Clean Water Act tools and priorities. We really are hoping to give good overviews and then really have a good discussion with you all, because we know that many of you all really have your own notions and experience with what these priorities and challenges are. So that's our plan, and Ellen, take it away.
Thank you, Jan. And I hope while we're speaking you'll enjoy these pictures that we put together of some pre- and post-Clean Water Act to really show you how far we've come in the 40 years since the Clean Water Act. And I know I don't have to remind this audience of the value of our waters. So I really appreciate being here today to talk to all of you who are really our clean water partners. I want to thank everybody right off the bat for everything that you do protecting and restoring the Great Lakes. I was able to be here since yesterday. I've really been impressed by the people I've met and the things I've heard here. It's a great and diverse group that has come together all with the common goal of restoring the Great Lakes. So it's very fitting to be here to talk to you today as we celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Clean Water Act. And I do encourage you to Google Clean Water 40 and you'll get to the EPA website, because we have lots of great information about the Clean Water Act, pictures, accomplishments, things like that. So Clean Water 40. One of our primary objectives at EPA this year is to raise the public awareness of the importance of water in everything we do. The message that we're conveying is simple. Everyone deserves clean water. It's vital for our health, for our communities, for the environment, and it's vital for our economy. And that's the simple message that we're trying to convey. We need clean water in our homes, our schools, our public places. Of course, fish and wildlife depend on clean water to thrive. It's our greatest liquid asset. It's critical to businesses that form the basis of our economy, agriculture, industry, tourism, energy production, commercial fishing, fisheries. Everybody needs that clean water to conduct whatever it is they're doing. And also investing in clean water and our clean water infrastructure generates economic activity and creates jobs. Dirty water, on the other hand, is costly to people, to businesses, to our cities. We've learned it's much cheaper to prevent pollution than to clean it up. Again, I don't have to tell all of you that because you're working on cleanups right here, but wouldn't it be easier to protect our already clean water so we don't have to clean them up in the future? That's something that the Clean Water Act can help us do as well. So let me talk a little bit about the Clean Water Act. Bob Perciasepe told you all at lunch, sort of went back to the time before the Clean Water Act when you had waste flowing into rivers and harmful chemicals and unsafe for fishing and swimming and all that stuff. So we'll move on from that. On October 18th, 1972, Congress passed the Clean Water Act and really provided a comprehensive strategy for dealing with water pollution. We've already heard the eloquent goal of the Clean Water Act, so I won't repeat that again, but let me elaborate on it instead. So the Clean Water Act broadly defined what waters were protected. Of course, that definition, the courts have had a good time with that definition over the years, but it's really a broad definition of our nation's waters. It established a process for states to work with federal oversight to protect waters. So it established a process by which the federal government could delegate to states certain authorities to issue permits with federal oversight, and it also provided something called Section 401 certification, which is a state water quality certification of any federal action. So the state has a voice to weigh in on actions that might take place at the federal level but affect their state. A very important tool. The Clean Water Act set interim goals that all waters be fishable and swimmable, and then it established a process for states to develop water quality standards to get to that fishable, swimmable state, or else to declare certain waters have different designated uses. Some might not have that as a designated use, although that's the overall goal. All municipal and industrial wastewater dischargers were required to get permits that defined the amount of pollutants they could discharge. It's really hard to imagine a time, but there was a time when a sewage treatment plant does just discharge. Nobody monitored what was coming out of it. The Clean Water Act protected wetlands and rivers and streams from dredging and filling under Section 404. It launched a grant program to help states construct water treatment facilities. It gave an extraordinary role to citizens. It clearly recognized that citizens have a vital role to play in protecting waters and brought them into the process. And this was really very, very unique for a federal statute to do this. And again, something that is so important and fundamental of the Clean Water Act and to protecting our waters. It set up programs to address special ecosystems, including the Great Lakes. So again, that's how we got here today. So since 1972, we've made great strides across the country as well as here in the Great Lakes. We've kept billions of pounds of sewage, chemicals, and trash out of our waterways. We've held polluters accountable. We've developed science and innovation. As Bob Perciasepe said earlier, we've really taken our urban waterways from wasteways to be a center for redevelopment. The result for citizens has been that more of our waters are protected. Many of our waters that used to be polluted are now clean and safe. And to me, again, one of the most important things the Clean Water Act did was establishing this federal, state, local partnership to help us reach the goals. So I believe this really is one of the greatest accomplishments of the Clean Water Act. It laid the foundation for the strong and meaningful relationships we see here today. In all the meetings we've had, we have a partnership between all the federal agencies, with citizens groups, local groups, state groups. I mean, everyone is coalesced together here with the Great Lakes, and that's really was made possible by the Clean Water Act. And these partnerships also encourage the sharing of tools, of data technology, improved planning, and all this leads to better water protection and restoration. So just a few more quick details on our progress on clean water. In terms of funding for water facilities, the Clean Water Act's provided more than $140 billion for projects to improve the nation's water infrastructure and reduce water pollution. The population that's served by secondary wastewater treatment has doubled. Since 1972, the permitting program has stopped billions of pounds of sediment, nutrients, and toxics from flowing into our rivers. We've issued technology-based regulations. In the past 40 years, all 50 states, all U.S. territories, and 38 Indian tribes have established their own water quality standards to protect water for swimming, drinking, aquatic life, and other uses. And EPA has published recommended water quality criteria for over 150 pollutants that the states can then use to help adopt their water quality standards. The Clean Water Act also provides some programs for non-point source pollution, which, as you know, is pretty critical in the Great Lakes area as well as elsewhere. Over the past 10 years, our 319 state programs, that's state program grants, have reduced phosphorus by more than 113 million pounds, nitrogen by more than 77 million pounds, and sediment by more than 22 million tons. We've also worked for water efficiency, to conserve our water resources. We have a great program called WaterSense that has helped consumers save 125 billion gallons of water and $2 billion on utility bills since its launch, I think, just 4 years ago. And we've also done a lot of projects for Native Americans. We've spent, since '87, we've spent $372 million in Clean Water Indian Set-Aside grant program to help finance almost 1,000 projects in Indian country. So right here in the Great Lakes, you all know the wonderful things that you've all been doing, and again, that's been enabled by the Clean Water Act. So my message is the Clean Water Act is still going strong at age 40, and it still provides a framework that is usable and moves the ball forward on getting to clean water with everybody else's help. So thank you very much. Did our slideshow go off?
It keeps circulating, I
Oh,
think.
okay, so it will, all right. Well,
Let's do it.
I'll just leave it alone.
Good afternoon. So yesterday I was told I was a little loud. How am I doing today? Okay? All right. Well, as you heard from Ellen, the Clean Water Act is really a framework. And once you understand the basics of the Clean Water Act, you can use that framework to protect and restore your waterways. So one of those basic building blocks is the water quality standards, which sets goals and pollution limits for each water body. These can determine which waters need to be protected or restored, and if restored, by how much. And understanding the water quality standards will really help you apply all parts of the Clean Water Act to improve the health of your watershed. So if you have weak standards, you're going to see a lot more pollution that is legally allowable. So the message there is you really want strong standards. You want to get involved, and you want to make sure that when they're debating these water quality standards, that you are involved in that process. And when developing the water quality standards, each state must designate uses, which we heard a little bit about, for each water body, or like a stream or a stream segment. such as, is it a cold water habitat or a warm water habitat? And that's really based upon a lot of different criteria. And in Ohio, it's based upon biological, physical, and chemical scientific criteria. So these designated uses are those that are specified in the water quality standards, but might not be attained yet, but that there's potential to do so. So you might have, say, like the Cuyahoga River, there are parts of it that are considered a warm water habitat. It might not be meeting that attainment at the moment, but the potential to do so is there. Thankfully, however, the Clean Water Act makes it very difficult to lower those water quality standards. And it was designed to make sure that you don't lower or downgrade a particular use. And however, it can be done through a use attainability analysis. And each state must also establish water quality criteria, such as how much of a certain pollution is allowed in a water body or a water segment before it is no longer meeting its water quality standard or its designated use. And each state must develop and implement anti-degradation policies and procedures. And those are really procedures that must address when pollution is going to flow into that water body or that water segment and may impact that water quality. So water quality standards must fully represent the use and its potential use. And one body of water could possibly have multiple uses. So, one stream segment, like I just talked about, the Cuyahoga River has many different stream segments, and on that there are multiple uses, such as warm water habitat. I believe there's a high quality as well. But in those segments as well, there might also be multiple designated uses as well, and they must really meet the most stringent designated use. So the OEC consistently uses water quality standards to advocate for the protection and restoration of our water bodies. I have two examples. Unfortunately, they both fall out of the Ohio Lake Erie Basin, but I think they're good examples. So we've been really pushing back on Murray Energy, and some of you might know him, this company as a coal company, for about 5 years now. And this company wants to turn 6 miles of Casey Run, a high-quality stream in southwest Ohio, into a coal waste pit. Murray Energy has applied for a permit 3 times, and each time we've been successful in using the water quality standards to get the Ohio EPA to deny that permit, which has been fantastic because there's also some talk about it being potentially a cold water stream and probably one of the most pristine streams in the state. And we've also used the water quality standards to successfully push back on proposed drainage ditch. So Bee Run, unfortunately, is also outside of the Ohio Lake Erie Basin, is a natural waterway that drains into the Olentangy River in Marion County. And it had been channelized between 1893 and 1951, but segments have recovered, and you started to see a variety and diverse fish and other wildlife. But some landowners really wanted to handle their drainage or their water problem and set up a better. They wanted their land to drain better, and so they petitioned the Marion County to improve their agricultural drainage. And the Marion County engineer proposed to remove all trees and vegetations along the banks of Bee Run to create over 4 miles of open ditch. So we filed a verified complaint with Ohio EPA stating that it would lower the water quality standards within Bee Run and would also lower the water quality standards in the receiving body, Olentangy River. The EPA then required them to redesign their ditch and use a natural stream use. So it was a great success for us, and what better way to use the water quality standards. Right now, at the state level, there is, in Ohio, for those of you that are in Ohio, there's a real debate that's been going on actually ever since I've been at the Ohio Environmental Council for 7.5 years now. So we're talking about, the Ohio EPA has had a package of rules that they have consistently tried to put out and consistently have been met with fierce opposition from the coal industry and somewhat from the Ohio Department of Transportation, but also from the Ohio Chamber of Commerce. And so just this past summer, myself and some other folks met with the Ohio EPA and the coal industry and the Ohio Department of Transportation to talk through these water quality standards on primary headwater habitats. So those small waterways that are draining into the larger waterways, right, and that are very critical to ensuring that we have good water quality. And at the end of all of that, after the Ohio Department of Transportation now coming on board and supporting the rules, after the Ohio EPA listening to the coal industry and actually doing what they asked them to do, and they're now going to fiercely oppose them again. And see, we recognize, yes, we would want them to be more stringent. There are things that we really would like to see, we were a little disappointed in, but we recognize that this is a clear compromise, and we are ready to go forward and support the Ohio EPA. And I hope for those of you that are in Ohio, I hope that you will take a moment and start to learn about this as well and get involved and really help push the Ohio EPA into moving these rules forward, because they will be beneficial to all of the waters in Ohio. So another tool that I wanted to talk about is total maximum daily load. And I don't know who lets scientists name these things, but this would be a clear case as to why we don't let scientists name these things. They're quantitative assessments in a body of water that pinpoints the sources of pollution and how much that pollution needs to be reduced. So it's a pretty thick report, and I'm sure many of you have read them before, but they are pretty thick, and they're very detailed and very informative. And in fact, a good TMDL can be used as a watershed restoration plan because, as I said, it identifies the sources, both point sources, so that's actually coming out of a pipe, and non-point sources, that's actually flowing off the land or off of agricultural urban landscape. And it sets goals for reduction. And as you heard, and as we've heard, I think I've also said, is that the Clean Water Act really focuses on point source pollution. So once a watershed has a TMDL, you can use these goals for pollution to make sure that any permits being approved by your particular state takes into consideration the goals outlined in the total maximum daily load report, but also not just takes into consideration, but make sure that they are written into that permit, that permit is reflective of what's in that TMDL. And it's important to remember, again, that the Clean Water Act is really more focused on point sources, and we heard from Ellen that there are some tools for non-point sources, but largely there are little regulations for polluted farm field runoff, failing septic tanks, and failing wetlands. But a good TMDL can really focus efforts. So you might have a lot of people, for instance, working on the Maumee River to end the spewing of nutrients flowing into Lake Erie. But nobody really knows where all those sources are without a TMDL. In fact, the Ohio Environmental Council, National Wildlife Federation, Lake Erie Waterkeeper, and others that were potentially in the room if I could see them, we have been really pushing for a TMDL on the Maumee River. The Maumee River puts in about 46% of the nutrients into Lake Erie. And so if we could have a total maximum daily load report, we could have identified sources of those pollution and goals to move towards those pollution. And then, therefore, all of us that are working in that region can really pinpoint and focus our efforts and be more effective in it. And so I really think, like I said, a good TMDL can be a good watershed restoration plan. So I will have to admit, we're really only scratching the surface on a lot of this stuff. I don't know if many of you have taken the time to read the Clean Water Act. It's very lengthy and somewhat dull and dry at times. But I know Ellen brought up the 401 water quality certification. And, the 401 water quality certification requires a federal permit, or is required when a federal permit is issued that may impact water quality is required to ensure that a federal permit meets the water quality standards in that particular water body. So the central feature of the 401 water quality certification is the state's or tribe's ability to grant or grant with conditions, deny or waive completely the need to have a 401 water quality certification. So those that are downstream maybe, so for instance, we're in Ohio, if say Kentucky was receiving through, let's say, you know, some waterway, I don't know, the Ohio River, they really don't have authorization to deny or permit with conditions or deny or waive that 401 water quality certification. It's wherever that discharge is happening. So if it's happening in Ohio, Ohio has authority. If it's happening, if the facility is in Ohio, but they're discharging in Kentucky, well then Kentucky has the authority. So when you couple up the 401 water quality certification with U.S. Army Corps of Engineers dredge and fill for a FOR permit, you can try and get watershed-specific conditions. Because the 404 permit, or the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers dredge and fill permit, requires that the applicant provide an alternative analysis for the proposed project. For example, in Ohio we have trout streams that are designated as cold water habitat. That's because they're often recharged by aquifer, by groundwater, rather than rainfall. And so if a particular project was going to impact the aquifer recharge in Sulphur Springs, for instance, which is a tributary to the Sugar River in Ohio and then drains into Lake Erie, a group or an individual could urge the Ohio EPA to require additional watershed-specific conditions to protect that cold water designated use. And you can also use the 401 water quality certification to urge your state EPA to avoid impacts to the water body using the water quality certification, or at the very least strongly suggest mitigation needs to take place. So for instance, right now the Ohio Environmental Council is very involved in finding a permit and trying to save a sawmill wetland, which is actually out of the Ohio Lake Erie Basin as well. And it's 17 acres of Category 3, which is high-quality wetlands. And all indications are that DNR wants to sell this property to be developed. And in return, we, the state of Ohio, the people of Ohio, the watershed, will get 40 acres of riparian, 40 acres of land, I'm trying to make this as simple as possible, land along the riverbanks, right? Riparian strip along the riverbank of the Olentangy River. And first flag that went off for us is, wait a second, this is apples to oranges. We have a Category 3 wetland and you want to give us green space. You're not replacing the functions of the wetland that you're destroying. Under the Clean Water Act, it says no net loss. Well, that's a huge loss. Ohio's second in the nation for wetland loss. We are now losing flooding. Wetlands are vital for flooding, to reduce impacts to flooding, the clean drinking water, all these great things that wetlands do. They provide economic benefits and recreational opportunities, and you're offering us something that's completely not it. So we are, working with a lot of partners, some of them which are here, to try to figure out how do we move forward, including the Ohio EPA. We've had a lot of discussions with Ohio EPA, ODNR, about how do we move forward to make sure that we are really replacing the functions of this wetland. And first of all, let's completely look at a different site. But it's very rare, I think, and from sitting from where I am, it's very rare to see actual avoidance. And it's only really when you see avoidance, it's because it's a high quality stream, river, or wetland, and in this case, not so much. So I guess I'd really urge you to take a look at those things. So you can, I don't know about other states, but I know in Ohio you can sign up for their permit public notices, and they'll send them out to you. You can take a look at them and start to try to understand what's going on in your watershed. At the Ohio Environmental Council, what we try to do is if we see something that is in a particular watershed, we know that somebody's working in that watershed, we'll fax it over to them or email it to them and say, you really need to take a look at this. What are your thoughts? Certainly draw on the people that are within your state or within your watershed. There's a lot of expertise. Talk to the US EPA, talk to your state EPA and DNRs and so forth, and get their thoughts on it as well. But like I said, there are a lot of other tools within the Clean Water Act that we haven't even touched on today that are not of any less value. For really good information on this, the River Network has an online tool that you can go through, very simple, very easy, where you can sit at your desk, the comfort of your home, and go through it and actually at the end take a quiz to find out how well you did. I don't think that it reports to them. At least they haven't told me whether or not it has. But I also brought some Clean Water Act guides that the Ohio Environmental Council did. They're in the back. I have a stack of them up here too if you're interested. And it talks about how to file a verified complaint, how to undertake a citizen suit, some of that type of stuff as well. But before I do close, I would like to note that while the Clean Water Act focuses mainly on point sources, it is a historic piece of legislation that has helped us come so far. And the many tools available within the Clean Water Act can help us all continue to restore and protect our local watersheds and the Great Lakes. And that is why I think we really must be really vigilant as to what's going on in Congress at our state houses. You know, just last year, Congress put in 41 riders in the appropriations bill to gut the Clean Air Act and gut the Clean Water Act. And then it resurfaced again a little bit later in the year, and these were standalone bills. Some of them have resurfaced again, and they're going to continue to resurface. And it's all in the, as they say, it's all in the name of jobs. Now, we know that the economy and the environment can go in hand, and in fact, they do, and we've heard that over these last couple of days. So I would really urge you to be vigilant in Congress, vigilant at the state level as well, and get involved with your, get to know your EPAs, your DNRs, those folks, and get to know the resources that you have in your state to tap them. If you have a law clinic, tap that resource, and just get engaged in the permitting process. So thank you.
Thanks to both of you. I mean, you all, I think there's a lot of expertise out there in the audience that it's hard for us to see. We do have just about 17 minutes or so, almost 20 minutes, to actually have some interaction with you all, if you've got questions or comments. Then I want to make sure that I say before I forget that the adjustments for the time schedule are such that we will go till 3. There will be a break between 3 and 3:10, and the next breakout session starts at 3:10. So I just want to, again, I guess I just want to follow up briefly. First, thank these two. They gave you a lot of information. Couple points I just want to re-emphasize. One is, I think you heard a lot about the connection. We tend to lose track of the connection between the Federal Clean Water Act and all this work that's going on at the state and local level. And I just wanted to highlight the point that while the rubber really meets the road at kind of the state and the watershed level, but a couple of things not to forget is a lot of that structure, a lot of what brings people to the table, a lot of what brings the resources to the table for mitigation, for TMDLs, is these federal requirements and the oversight of the federal EPA and the Corps of Engineers on the 404 program. But the work's really being done at the state level, but as an old colleague, John Kussler, has always said, we always remember this, is that for the state, he was the executive director and founder of the Association of State Wetland Managers, and he said, on behalf of the state wetland managers and water quality people, the federal government, the EPA, the Corps, the Clean Water Act, is the gorilla in the closet. So when we at the state are going out there and trying to negotiate that coal, with the coal companies and with the farmers and the TMDL, they can always say, you want to work with us because we know what's going on in the state. We can accommodate and tailor things to meet the needs of the watershed. You don't want to be dealing with the gorilla in the closet. And that's a really important function of the Clean Water Act. The other point I just wanted to reinforce is the role of all of us and the grassroots effort in all of this. I mean, it's implicit in everything that Christy and Ellen said, but you really don't. I've been in meetings with the wetland managers, for example, where the Ohio EPA person who's really trying to do the right thing will sidle up quietly where nobody is around, like his boss or anything, and say, we really need your help. We need you to bring a lawsuit, or we need your people to show up at the State House because we can't do it all of ourselves. So I know this is obvious to a lot of you, but I just wanted to reinforce that point and then go on to say that, at the National Wildlife Federation and our work for years and years on these issues, and with our coalitions, with the Healing Our Waters, our role in the Healing Our Waters Coalition, a lot of other groups, state and federal groups, involved with Healing Our Waters Coalition, with other coalitions. That's part of our job, is to be there as a resource. So you don't have to just go to the Clean Water Act and read the code, or, the River Network thing is a great online tool, but don't hesitate to pick up the phone or email, me or other people in our offices, whether at your state group, Christy, I'm always offering up Christy, to get help with answering questions and providing some guidance. So with that, it's a little bit hard to see, so if any of you all have comments, would you please go to the mic and also say your name and affiliation, because even though I know a lot of you, it's hard to see. Is that?
I don't think it's on. No.
Do you want to come up here and I can? Maybe somebody can. Is it working now? It sounds like it might be, but.
Christy, you were talking about the primary headwater habitat rules, and you mentioned there were some compromises you had to make, and I was wondering if you could say a little more about that. And also, are there some new wetland rules that are floating out there also?
Well, yeah. That would have been great to have brought some of that information with me. But I do know that we're a bit concerned about these primary headwater habitat. They're breaking it down into 3 categories.
And you've been watching a question and answer session as the Healing Our Waters Coalition has their breakout sessions this afternoon, talking about 40 years of the Clean Water Act as we continue our coverage of Great Lakes Week right here in Cleveland on greatlakesnow.org. We want to jump you to another session right now. They're talking about gray and green of combined sewer overflow in Northeast Ohio and what they're doing here. Let's go ahead and listen in.
Kelly Rotuno. I'm the Director of Engineering and Construction for the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. We are the sewer district for the Cleveland region and 62 member communities in all we serve. Just to give you a little bit of a geographic perspective on who we are and where we are, this map shows the gray shaded area as the Cleveland Metropolitan Statistical Area, and the red boundary shows the service area, the service boundary of the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. So you can see that we serve Cleveland and much of Northeast Ohio in terms of wastewater services. A little bit about us: we are not a city, we are a regional entity created in 1972 by court order. We're technically a political subdivision of Ohio. We have a 7-member board of trustees that governs the actions of our agency. I mentioned 62 member communities, and our average daily flow that we treat at our wastewater plants is 230 million gallons per day. The service area is about 355 square miles. This shows it with the interstate infrastructure superimposed on that. There are some major highways that run through our service area and service the Cleveland metropolitan area. Well, what does the sewer district do here, this governmental run entity that's not a city or a county? We operate 3 wastewater treatment plants. We also own and operate the interceptor sewers, and we do the maintenance on those as well. Those are the large diameter pipes that take the bulk of the flow, not the small diameter pipes that go to the homes. Those are still owned by local wastewater entities. We are on point for the combined sewer overflow program and compliance with the combined sewer overflow policy under US EPA. And we are also responsible for regional stormwater management. And we plan to talk about all 3 of these here today, myself and my colleague. To speak first about our infrastructure that we own, this map shows the service area shaded in gray, and the green lines represent the interceptor sewers. Those are the large diameter sewers that we own and we operate. And the 3 dots near the top of the map represent the 3 wastewater plants that we operate and we own, where all the flows from these interceptors go. What's interesting is when you realize that we are taking care of those regional pipes, much like a DOT would take care of regional interstates. The local pipes and the local sewers that go to the homes and into the neighborhoods are owned and operated by the local entities and the government bodies. So I mentioned 62 member communities. So 62 member communities have the bulk of the operation and maintenance of the sewers in the region. As it breaks down, we have about 312 miles that we're responsible for. The communities have about 10 times that they are responsible for. So again, we are the large diameter, large infrastructure sewer agency for the region. And the local communities still have all the local sewer issues and compliance that they need to deal with. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Project Clean Lake. Project Clean Lake is our combined sewer overflow compliance program. And we are happy to say that we are off and running on this project and this program. For those of you who are not intimately familiar with what a combined sewer is or looks like, this is a sneak peek inside a combined sewer with a side spill trough. During normal, average daily flows, the sewage goes straight down the area on the left of this graph and goes through the pipe and would go directly to a wastewater plant, where it would be fully treated before it discharges into a stream or into Lake Erie. But when it rains, the flows in that trough will rise above the weir to the right, and it spills over into a different pipe. And there is a outlet in that second pipe that does not go to a wastewater plant. It goes to the environment, directly to the environment. So when it rains, the flows from combined sewer overflow structures like this get directly into the environment. They carry raw sewage and stormwater into the streams and into Lake Erie. This is what a combined sewer overflow outlet looks like. This one happens to be located on Edgewater Beach, which is a public beach on the west side of Cleveland. This one has historically gone off many times before some of the improvements that were made by the Regional Sewer District. Now it is controlled to a level where it should not go off in a typical year. So unless there's an extreme event, this no longer discharges into Lake Erie near the beach where folks like to go and swim in the summer. So our combined area is a subset, our combined sewer area is a subset of our overall service area. It's shown shaded in green here. Those overflow points, we have 126 of them within our combined sewer area that discharge into the receiving streams and into Lake Erie. And the red dots on this map represent those discharge locations where during rain events we have sewage, raw sewage overflowing into our environment. So this is a bad thing, and we've known about it for a long time. And since the 1970s, the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District has been working to reduce these combined sewer overflows to the environment. And it was estimated back in the 70s that about 9 billion gallons of combined sewage was overflowing into the environment in a typical year. Currently, 2011, 2012 also being current, we have about 4.5 billion gallons of combined sewage that we estimate overflows into the environment. That's half of the levels that were going out in the 1970s, but it's still too much, and it does not comply with the Clean Water Act. So we entered into a long period of engineering studies in the 90s to come up with a plan to reduce those overflows. And the plan that we came up with reduced those overflows significantly. And ultimately, when we agreed with the US EPA and Ohio EPA on what the final level of control would be at the end of our Project Clean Lake, it was agreed that 98% capture was the right number and less than 500 million gallons of remaining combined sewage overflowing into the environment would be the right number. That right number comes with a price tag, and it comes with a time frame that we need to comply within. And that's a 25-year program and a $3 billion price tag. Here in Cleveland, a lot of those studies that were done indicated that the most cost-effective and beneficial way to control the combined sewage overflow was through a series of deep storage tunnels. And our program includes a number of them. It includes 7 CSO tunnels, 21 miles total length, and the size of those are very, very large, from 17 feet in diameter to 24 feet in diameter. They will be mined anywhere from 100 to 200 feet below ground. Many of them will be mined in rock. So when all 7 tunnels are built, we'll have more than 300 million gallons of storage built into our system, and that will help us achieve the level of control of less than 500 million gallons remaining. So it's pretty substantial and aggressive. We currently have one of those tunnels under construction, the Euclid Creek Tunnel. It's one of the 24-foot diameter tunnels. We launched this massive tunnel boring machine. You see a picture of the cutting head here, the yellow and the green cutting head. We just launched it last month and started active mining operations through the rock to construct this tunnel. It's going to be 18,000 feet long. It's an engineering marvel in terms of the technology of the tunnel boring machine. It will advance through the earth 5 feet at a time and leave 5 feet of fully constructed tunnel behind it as it goes. So by the time the tunnel boring machine mines through the rock and gets to the end of the 18,000 foot length, it will leave behind it a fully constructed and ready to be operational concrete pipe. Previously, tunnels used to be mined the old way. They would do them by hand before tunnel boring machine technology, and then the early tunnel boring technology would have the tunnel mining and going through one time and then putting up support and then coming back through to form up the concrete and pour the concrete to go through a second time. So you would have to go through it two times, a 2-pass system. This is what we call a 1-pass system. It's really one of the first ones to be done in rock. There aren't that many of them here in the U.S. They have done them over in Europe and elsewhere. So this is really a cutting-edge project for us, and we're trying this technology to help mitigate against the risks of methane gas, which can be a problem when you're tunneling through our local geology, as well as the overbreak, because our shale is very friable, and when you're cutting a hole and mining through it, it can tend to overbreak. So if you're immediately supporting it with concrete and grouting it in place, you support that rock and you reduce the potential for those issues to occur. So that's why we're going with this technology, and so far so good. In order for that tunnel to be effective, it's going to be 200 feet below ground. So instead of overflowing into the environment when it rains, our CSOs are being diverted into a deeper storage tunnel. We'll hold the rain and combined sewage in that tunnel until the storm subsides. Then we will need a way to extract the flow from the tunnel and get it to our wastewater plant, where it can be fully treated and then discharged to the lake, fully treated. And so we have to have a tunnel dewatering pump station to support it. So we are also in the midst of constructing that tunnel dewatering pump station. It has to go down to the tunnel level in order to pump it, and then it will pump it into a local interceptor sewer where it will flow by gravity. We're fortunate. All we have to do is lift it up and put it into a gravity sewer, and it'll flow to our plant where it'll be fully treated. And when this project gets combined with its sister project in this particular part of our service area, it will eliminate 1 billion gallons of the 4 billion gallons that we're on the hook to get rid of by 2020. So by 2020, we will shave that 4.5 billion gallons of remaining down to 3.5 billion gallons. So we're excited that we're off and running. To talk a little bit more about the cost of this $3 billion program, it's not surprising that the bulk of the cost is shown in the blue section of this pie chart. It's in the tunnels. These are not inexpensive capital investments. They are very deep, they are very risky, and they are very large. So we estimate about a half of our $3 billion commitment is going to go toward those. The remaining commitment in our Project Clean Lake is going to go toward improvements at our wastewater plants. We have to increase the wet weather capacity so that they can treat even more of the wet weather flow. We are going to have more pump stations and tanks. And there's a little green sliver in there called green infrastructure that I want to talk to you more about. That's actually probably going to be more than that sliver when we're done, if we have our way. So $3 billion sounds like a lot of money. You know, where's it coming from? Is it coming from grants, or you getting loans? No, generally it's not coming from grants. We might be able to get some loan funding through the state, but the bulk of it's coming out of the ratepayers' pocket and funded by the local people of Northeast Ohio. And our board has courageously passed rate increases to support this program for clean water, and our residents are going to be bearing the burden. But it's not just about the cost to the ratepayer. There's also a benefit to our program, and we wanted to better understand that $3 billion of investment. It's all happening in Northeast Ohio, and there's economic benefit to investing $3 billion in your local economy. What is that? So we commissioned a study with the Cleveland State University to look at the economic impact of at least the initial 5 years of our program and understand that. What does it mean in terms of jobs, labor income, value-added output, and tax to our region? And when you look at the 7-county area, which is the top portion of this graph, you can see we've estimated more than 31,000 jobs can be created, employment opportunities through this program, the first 5 years alone. Labor income more than $1.6 million, or actually $1.6 billion. So that's not too insignificant either. Value added, $2.1 billion, output 4.6, and ultimately the tax is going to be increased to the region of about $443 million. So those are real numbers for the first 5 years. We think that shows that investment is going to benefit the region, at least economically.